Hey everyone, welcome. First off, I want to say thank you to NFT.NYC. Every year it gets better and more interesting. Thrilled to be here. There's a lot to talk about today. So, NFTs and the power to revolutionize the film and music industry. My background prior to being in Web3 was in entertainment. I owned and operated a couple of nightclubs, and then I moved into developing the first fully immersive campus for entertainment in downtown Los Angeles. So 35,000 square feet with geodesic domes and shared virtual reality experiences. On that campus, we had AR, VR, and AI technologies. Right before COVID hit, because I had opened that massive complex, I had 6 of those in development. And everyone knows what happened during COVID. No one was investing any longer in nightclubs, entertainment venues. So my investors pulled out, but I had this killer team, right? I had these people who could make content that was astounding. So what we did is we started doing virtual events for the electronic music industry. And we were creating them with process IP on Unreal Engine, and we got to market in 12 to 14 weeks. And we had some really big people sign up right away, like John Digweed and Sasha and Claptone. But in that moment, it felt odd to be doing virtual experiences, kind of early metaverse, pre-metaverse, and putting it out for streaming in the traditional way. This is when we started to think about blockchain, right? So if you have blockchain, and you stream your content on chain, it changes everything. It really changes the way that you can integrate NFTs. Now, using them as gating mechanisms is pretty common right now. But back then, we were really revolutionizing the tokenization of ticketing. But here's the thing. If you're on chain, you can start to mint NFTs in the event. You can start to do in-event NFTs that are selfies that you can put out during the event to raise awareness. So I'm going to walk you through today a couple of things that I worked on, and I'm going to walk you through some things that I admire and some use cases that are currently existing in the industry. So Visionary was that company I was just talking to you about, and I'm bringing up the Chainsmokers example, which I was not a part of, because Chainsmokers actually released a series of NFTs that gave you, I believe it was between 5,000 people, 1% of their streaming revenue. Now this is interesting, and I'm not an attorney, but this idea that an NFT could be an investment in an artist or an event and provide you revenue, that's tricky. But if you are gonna do it and you have a legal team that can make it happen, I think it has to be meaningful. I'm not so sure that 1% of streaming revenue for 5,000 people split is that interesting. So what I want to propose to everybody here using NFTs for music and film is, let's find ways that it benefits the artists. Let's find ways that it truly benefits the user. And that's what that first slide really was about. Like, I see a lot of one-off marketing executions for the use of NFTs in film and music, but truly what we need is we need to create an ecosystem where people continually return. They continually are engaged by the content, by the artist, and they can provide something in exchange. So that is really at the heart and soul of what's important to me in this conversation. This is kind of an interesting example. When I talked about putting the content I was creating on chain, I worked with a partner called Alluvio. If you don't know them, they're really fantastic. Aspara was a company used to move content. The founder of that company, Michelle Munson, eventually sold it to IBM and started Alluvio. And Alluvio did this drop for Cannonball Run, starting to really think beyond, just trinkets and creating a club where the previous fans of the IP and the new fans of the IP can come together and really benefit. Now, Lord of the Rings is a great example, and I'm not sure how many people even knew this happened, but Lord of the Rings had a series of virtual environments that were NFT gated that allowed the passive viewer in the cinema to then become an active, engaged audience member in the narrative. That changes things a bit. And this is barely getting scratched the surface of. So Vikram. Vikram was a project that I spent a considerable amount of time working on personally. And if you're not familiar with the film, I recommend you watch it. It's really fun. It is actually the highest grossing Tamil film of all time out of Bollywood. Worldwide, it was a sensation, and it even had a release in the United States. So my team, when I was at Alt Ethos, was charged with creating a photorealistic metaverse for fan engagement. Now that's interesting, right? Couple things to also note is that the cast of this film was like Ocean's 11 in that market. So you had all of these big stars. So this had to be substantial. So what we did do initially for Vikram 1 was we had a NFT-gated metaverse where you could explore the storyline, get challenged with guest quests and games. You could change your wardrobe as you won challenges, all sorts of pretty basic things. You could mint NFTs in world. But where it got interesting was when we started talking about the sequel. Why? Because the movie was now out, right? So people knew the plot, they knew the narrative. And these characters, which were so juicy, you could actually make them NFTs, right? We could mint them as NFTs. You could actually reorganize the gangs and factions. You could actually go back into the metaverse with your NFTs and expand the storyline, live out plot lines that really weren't fulfilled, create your own plot lines. The other thing we started to develop, and I love the metaverse for additional NFT utility value, are things like sub-metaverses, right? You complete a series of quests by one character, and that gets you into a part of the metaverse that other people don't even know to access. But when you're in that part of the metaverse, you get more of the backstories. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this type of utility, the reason why it was successful, I'm going to take a few steps back. When you think about India, and you think about Asia, and you think about the rest of the world, they're not always privy to gaming computers and the top technology. So all of this was browser-based. And the reason you want to have it browser-based is for maximum fan impact. So you have people logging on and engaging the characters and moving through the scenarios and earning rewards and coming back over and over and over again. Now, the filmmakers who did Vikram also had several other properties in development. So the third incarnation of the metaverse will have multiple IP players coming together as different characters from different films and meeting for additional games, quests, and challenges. This is a hilarious example for me. We've got Dolly Parton, who recently did an NFT drop for her latest album, which also provided the NFT purchasers with all sorts of items. I think that there could have been an expansion of this in a much more significant way that led back to her amusement parks, back to her products, back to in a moment where you could provide user-generated content to become a bigger fan, to get more rewards. So I think there's a lot of interesting studies out here that are happening that are super fun, but challenge us. And the last one I'm gonna end on is the Kings of Leon. I love the idea that as a fan, you get special custom treatment. My production side of me says, oh my God, that's a lot to manage. But I like the idea that it's meaningful to the consumer. So I hope I left you inspired to consider new opportunities for NFT utility. Thank you.